Spoilers ahead. This is your one and only warning. Leave now or forever hold your peace, because we're shooting blindly in these streets. And now, a Japan Time Podcast special presentation.
What is going on, everybody? Rogers Base here, and welcome to the Japan Time Spoilercast for Sonic X Shadow Generations. I'm actually going to ask you guys, is it Sonic Shadow Generations or Sonic X Shadow Generations or Sonic Cross Shadow Generations? I actually don't know how to say it.
It's Sonic X Shadow.
Yeah, and in NA it'd be Sonic X, but in Japan it's probably Sonic Cross.
Got it. Well, I am joined, of course, by the one and only Mr. Fidel Games Cage himself, Mr.
Hey.
Sonic. Welcome,
Yes.
welcome.
Everybody. I'm very excited to just chat away about Shadow. It's going to be
Full
a good
spoilers.
time.
Full spoilers. We're going into everything. We're going to drop
That's
some
right.
major spoilers right away.
Mephiles is in there, you know.
And exactly right, yeah. And then someone who's always very spoiler averse, but is also going to be spoiling some stuff today. We got McDareth. What's going on, McDareth?
Yeah, doing well. Hope you all have been doing well recently. Very excited to talk about this game. I know I've talked to Mike post Japan Time a bit, so excited to hear everyone else's full opinions of it now.
Fantastic. And then, of course, the English gentleman himself, Mr. Viram. How are you, Viram?
I can't believe Maria dies again, bros. How could they do this to us? It's so mean.
And last but not least, our very special Spoilercast guest, the one, the only. You know him, you love him. He's off building his family. We got Mike. What's going on, Mike? How are you, buddy?
I love Sonic.
You love Sonic.
I love that guy.
So what do you guys love about this game so much? I'm sitting back for most of this one. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm going to hop in when I feel like I got something to chime in on. But I want to hear from the really hardcore Sonic fans right now. You know, why is this game so peak? Because everybody's talking about it.
I think right off the bat, what makes it a very different release from all the others is like this one has no catch. You know, like I feel like with Frontiers, very ambitious game, but like the flaw was that like you can tell it was like kind of unpolished. You could tell they were trying a lot of ideas, and some of them were just kind of but there was some incredible stuff in there. Like you have crazy cinematics, you have a combat moveset. Like you could tell they were testing a bunch of stuff, and but a lot of it was very surface level, right? And then obviously before that, we've had, you know, the problems with Forces, the problems with Lost World and yada, yada. Like, it felt like genuinely the last time we had a peak Sonic game was Generations in 2011. And so to be back with Sonic Generations, with Shadow Generations and, like, the modern engine, we have, like, another game where, like, there's no catch. It's just purely great level design. If anything, it has, like, a fantastic story, which was the one flaw with OG Generations. And I feel like this game is just what people want from Sonic. Like literally just banger level design, a story that like can have cool moments but take itself seriously, and just has polish, has care put into it, like has actual like cinema, like in the cutscenes are actually cinematic and well made. Like it just felt like if this was what they would do for the next like just games in general, I'd be happy. Like this is the first time I came out of a Sonic game in a long time, be like, I can't believe Sonic Team made this. And so I think that's why this time it feels different. Is because even like big content creators that don't even normally play Sonic are playing, and they're like, yeah, that was just a great game. Like it's not one of those, oh yeah, for a Sonic game, this is great. Like this is just of platformers a really, really damn good one.
I do think it's funny that you mentioned that video too, because there was that one going around of all the people who don't normally stream Sonic games, and it's like the clips of all the stuff, and it starts with me yelling "Radical Highway."
Yeah,
that was a great video. Yeah,
awesome.
whoever put that together. So Vera, I'm sorry, you were going to say something. What's up?
Yeah. Just kind of piggybacking off of what Fidel was saying. Like for a very long time, I'd say pretty much a little bit after Generations released, you know, people, when it came to Sonic, they wanted a game, especially in terms of the modern gameplay. They wanted a game that was like that, and they just kind of, you know, evolved off of that. But then instead, of course, Sonic Team, being Sonic Team, like to not do that and instead deviate away from the stuff that they'd known and established. And then you get something like Sonic Lost World. And then you fast forward, it feels like they tried that again, where it's like, oh, let's just make Generations again. And that's what happened with Forces, but they kind of failed miserably, where it just wasn't really as fun as as Generations. The level design was considerably worse and a lot kind of shorter. Classic Sonic had no point in that game, and it was just a very kind of disappointing experience for a lot of people. But then you come to this game, and it's very much like, oh, this is more of Sonic Generations gameplay, but it feels refined in a lot of ways. You know, Shadow generally feels tighter to control. There's no additional fluff. I mean, I guess you could say, like, you know, the little challenge levels, but they don't deviate from the core gameplay of what Shadow is. But then on top of that, the things that they've added, the additions actually feel organic and they feel well realized. The white space hub world that they did for this game, I think, is really, really fun. It takes the ideas from Frontiers and creates a much more overall cohesive space with it, and it just feels very fun to kind of move around and interact with. And yeah, as mentioned before, just the level design very tight for the most part, and overall it feels like a very well put together experience.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
McDareth, how about you?
That's where I am real, like, because for a long time what I've been feeling like Sonic Team, like, really pretty much exactly what you've said, is that they need to make something, see what works, and then iterate on it. But very often they make something does work in it, but they just toss the whole thing out and make something new, and they do that consistently. And then it's just like they're not really building off what came before, they're just trying to establish something new. So this game to me feels like they learned from both Generations in its format, but also like with Frontiers, they picked up stuff from Frontiers, like for the open zone area and the white space, but also even like the gameplay feel of the game feels really good, because I mean, in Frontiers, having to press X to homing attack was a new thing, but I think adding that in, then adding in Doom Spears on Y, and like in a Sonic game, you're pressing more than just the A button all the time. Like you're actually pressing other buttons, and there's skill in when to use these buttons, and like timing things, like having to do a jump, Doom Spear two enemies, and then homing attack them all within the same jump is like a skill expression that normally you don't get in Sonic. And I think honestly going forward, they need to figure out a way to keep the Doom Spears mechanic, like have Sonic kick wind or something, because like that kind of gameplay feels really good when you're like platforming at high speeds and enemies are requiring you to interact with them in a better way than just homing attack them or just run past them.
So you bringing that up, actually, I want to ask then, you know, you were mentioning maybe having it where like Sonic is kicking wind spheres or something to that extent. Don't you think that's something that maybe they would want to hold on to for a future Shadow game? And that would be their way of sort of separating the gameplay of the core Sonic games and the gameplay of like a Shadow title? Because I do feel like, based on what all of you were already mentioning, right, in terms of this game sort of like breaking it more into the mainstream, like having a lot of people who aren't really necessarily Sonic fans playing this one. I almost feel like having Shadow kind of have his own side series where it is a little more like open exploration. It is like he has these different cool Doom powers and abilities. That seems like something that could be its own franchise that could stand on its own.
I feel like they'd be better off doing Sonic Adventure and having multiple characters playable again than split off a whole separate Shadow game, because then they can do more with more of the cast. And I think like Chaos Control should just stay Shadows. So like if they both have the Y thing, you just leave Shadow with Chaos Control, and then his gameplay is all automatically going to be different because that exists.
Sure. Well, Mike, we haven't heard from you yet. I really want to know what are you feeling about this in general? Overall thoughts first before we start diving into stuff, and then I'm going to pick up on what Fidel was saying too, because I know you were going to say something.
Overall thoughts, you know, I got into Sonic with Sonic Adventure 2, so that style of like a realistic setting with a narrative that they actually care about and take seriously, and Shadow the Hedgehog just in general, you know, Shadow has always been my favorite Sonic character ever since that first game I played. So all of these things are kind of what made me a Sonic fan to begin with, and I feel like nothing since SA2 has really built on top of that. Like, we've had other adventure games like Heroes, Shadow, 06, like games in that style, but nothing that like really expanded on just the feel of SA2 until this one. I went into this with like a wall put up because I've been so let down
Sure.
by Sonic this like entire decade. Like pretty much since Generations, I have not really enjoyed a Sonic game.
Sure.
And I keep getting them because like I again, like SA2 made me such a huge fan of the series, and I'm hoping that every game is like, maybe this will be the one. And I think specifically the point where that wall started to come down a little bit, not to get too deep into the narrative right now,
Yeah.
but it's the point in the narrative where Maria explains to Shadow why she named him that.
Oh,
And
always being by the light. Yeah.
when she first
sure.
brings it up, she's like, when she first is like, do you know why I named you Shadow? Like the irony wall is still up. I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be so stupid. I can't wait to make fun of this.
Yeah.
But I let it play. I let it do its thing. And at the end of that scene, I was just like, man, this is like everything I've been wanting this series to do for so long, just in terms of tone, just like taking itself seriously, being sincere. It's really, really great. And I think also to talk about the gameplay, like I don't think it's perfect. I think there's definitely some things where I play, I'm like, I wish like Shadow could turn a bit tighter or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think in general, like in terms of like the flow state, it was crazy playing Sonic Generations Modern and then immediately hopping into a Shadow level and being like, no, I kind of like this more.
Sure.
Well, it's like I felt like the gameplay of both are like with the it felt like a mix of adventure and the boost games because with boost games the whole point of them is they're almost like a rhythm game. Like you memorize the patterns of the level. When it comes to like Sonic Generations, like you in Sonic Gens to really love a level, you just have to memorize it. It's like boost, turn here, make sure you jump here, get to the top path over here, slide over here, jump there, and it's like a rhythm. You learn it's an obstacle course. It's like a high-speed obstacle course where you can't stop moving, and that's how you learn it. Whereas,
it's like everything has like a single solution.
Exactly. And whereas adventure games felt like obviously it's high speed, but like there's like open spots for you to choose. Like you want to go this way or this way, fight a few enemies to get to a different path. Like it's always been, there's been a bit more openness. And so I felt like, especially with Shadow Gens, it felt like a marriage of both in the levels where it was like, okay, you have the boost moments and the moments where you can, take a higher path or a lower path very quickly by reacting. But you also had the moments where it's like, all right, well, here you can go left or you can go upwards. If you fight this enemy, you can get yourself to a top path over there. If you boost off this grind rail, there's another path to that side. They felt like they were able to find that middle ground of old adventure style, but continue with the boost, because boosting is very fun, regardless of how people might feel about it. It's like boosting is really fun. So having that marriage felt really cool. I think of like that Kingdom Valley level, especially, where like there's so many paths in that level.
No, I will say though,
I saw a speedrun.
Not to sidestep this, but I will say on the topic of Kingdom Valley, okay, that challenge level where you have the wolves
that was so funny.
Oh my God, man! I never felt at any point in this game that I was like supremely challenged, right? I feel like at the end of the day, it's still like a Sonic game, except for that level, because I didn't realize until after I had beaten it that it was just that I was pressing the wrong button. It's telling you X. There's like the square button and the X button when you jump into the one that shoots you up and then the one that shoots you to the side. And instinctively, because the button on the one on the bottom was like X, I then was clicking X and it was dropping me down, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, that's the
And had I
only
just
one
read
that
the
you have to
button
press
prompt,
the other button in the entire
yeah,
game.
that was the only one in the whole game. So I'm like, what is happening? And I kept getting stopped right there and then having to go all the way through. I still had fun doing it, but I just wanted to give a shout out to that specific Kingdom Valley stage because it was the bane of my existence for like 20 minutes. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead, Mike.
No, speaking of Kingdom Valley,
Yeah.
I saw the skips people have been finding in that stage
Yeah.
feel just like adventure skips.
Oh yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like a boost skip where it's just like they're kind of just like breaking the game in order to make everything work. Like, there's one skip in Kingdom Valley where like you boost up a pillar to make it on top of one of the ceilings of a building, and it feels just like the skips you would see in like SA2,
Yeah.
where you would boost
Sure,
up a
sure.
slope, like in like the rail level in SA2.
Yeah. It's almost well, the main skip and like the main tech that people are using besides some like, because there are like broken techs that people do, like stomp on the ground 10 times to like boost yourself forward. Those ones are weird. Like there's the one common one, which is like the spear tech. So basically in this game, when you shoot chaos spears while you're in the air and boost, it pushes your momentum forward. So like let's say you get launched off a giant grind rail and you boost and then spam the spears, so like Shadow will continue flying upwards in that momentum. And so that alone is such like a simple fun tech that anyone can learn that like makes speedrunning the levels really fun.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I'm so happy that I don't know how you guys feel about this mechanic. I'm so happy homing dash is gone.
I
No, I agree.
I think it definitely would break the game. I'm a little sad because I enjoy using it in Frontiers, but like I understand because yeah, it would be kind of a mess if you could do that in this game.
I think homing dash was genuinely something that they didn't test for.
Yeah.
And too many people had used it and learned it, so they were just like, all right, whatever, let's now when they updated the game, they even added like a little symbol that shows that like you used it
if
in
you
a
used
level.
it or not.
Yeah. So it felt very much like something they didn't intend, and then when fans were liking it, they're like, all right, well, let's keep it. Whereas here everything feels pretty intentional.
Yeah. Like, even I'm not really a big fan of mechanics or glitches that like skip large
Yeah, I
chunks,
agree.
if not entire levels, which is why I
Yeah,
really
it's
didn't
not
like
my thing.
homing dash.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Chaos Spear, at minimum, you're skipping like maybe half an obstacle.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not
just
skipping like
lunging
entire
yourself.
levels.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I don't want to jump on the eagle, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
Chaos Spear over to the next platform.
Well,
It's gonna drop me off
even-
at.
Even in Frontiers, like in general, even the open zone, the spin dash was broken. And like it was
Yeah.
fun broken, but it was broken. Basically, like spin dash when you unlocked it, as long as you spin dash up a slope, Sonic just goes flying. Like you are literally just in the air for almost as long as you want. You could just fling yourself anywhere, which again was fun, but it still felt like, okay, I'm clearly like breaking things, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas here, I don't feel like I'm breaking anything. I feel like I'm using the momentum to push myself forward to do better runs, and I'm still experiencing the levels as they are.
Yeah, it's even great just because also these levels are quite long. So even
Yeah.
when a crazy skip is discovered, like one of the more recent ones is on Space Colony Arc Act 1, where you can use the gravity platform to just kind of fly over a bit of the level. But even after that, there's still like 2.5 minutes of a level left. That's
One
great.
mechanic that I think I missed from Frontiers was the bounce
Oh yeah,
that you could get from
Yeah.
holding the stomp button. That's a mechanic that I felt like very well integrated into that game. But considering
Yeah.
that this is kind of building off of the Generations foundation more so than Frontiers, I think that it makes sense that it's not here.
Yeah, it helps that Shadow is like really snappy in this.
Yeah.
Like going back to Sonic has like maybe like a couple of frames of lag when you stomp on the ground. But like Shadow, you can immediately jump once you land. it just feels really good. It just like again, it makes the 2D feel really good.
I have to agree actually, because I'm thinking about it in terms of my favorite levels. The 2D shadow level on Chaos Island, I loved.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
Chaos Island Act 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like Vanilla edited my highlight video of the playthrough, and I think he just like didn't include that because he wanted the transition from the Mephiles fight into like the final section of the game. But man, that level, my mind was just like completely blown half the time. Even like the volcano taking off in the background and everything, and having that remixed music, it was I had such a good time, and I genuinely did not think they were even gonna put any Frontiers stuff in the game because I figured, it's too new, they're just not gonna do it. And also on top of that, like I didn't know timeline wise if that was going to make sense because Generations obviously was before Frontiers. But then it's brought up at one point in the game. Like, doesn't Gerald say something of
Yes.
like, "Oh, you're seeing things in your future" or
Yeah,
whatever?
after the
So
Mephiles fight, if you go talk to Gerald, he mentions
Yeah.
that because basically, it's implied that Shadow asked him about why am I fighting someone that I haven't met,
right,
and then Gerald basically explains that fighting somebody you haven't met in a place you haven't seen, it's almost like what's tomorrow and what's yesterday is just mixed up here.
yeah. That was great though. I really did love that. And the not to again go off topic, but like the Forces level as well too was great. Like I never expected I was gonna think a Sonic Forces level was one of my favorite levels in the game. But both acts of Sunset Heights I thought were really, really good. Jumping between all the different robots and flying through the streets and everything's on fire. It's fantastic.
Well, I really love Sunsights is like was one of my favorite, like my big highlights. Because I just like it's funny. I watched a YouTube video where it was the comparison of both Sunset Heights side by side, right?
Yeah.
And the original, right, ends in like a minute, and then you just like that part of the comparison video ends. It's the black screen on the left, and the Shadow Gens one goes on for like 4 minutes,
Yeah.
And it's just great to see that in a sense of like how much they've evolved. And one thing I adored about the game so much, and I can't wait for the next Sonic game to do this, is I love the mid-level cinematics,
Yeah,
so
sure.
nice.
For sure.
Like, they're so cool because like right now I'm just picturing ones for Sonic where like in the future it'll be like something like an event, a rock breaks mid-level, Sonic's dashing through it and it transitions to another phase of the level. Like whenever Black Doom would do his thing, it wasn't just like, oh, the level's changing. It's like you see things going crazy. You're seeing Shadow doing jumps and flips, or you're seeing him like fling himself upward. Like it was so cool to see the different things happen midway through the level. It makes it feel cinematic, right? Which is very Sonic coded and has also like that change in the level design with the Black Doom stuff to the point where like I was almost disappointed when they weren't happening anymore. Like I was looking forward to like what was gonna be the Black Doom change in Chaos Island and what's it called? Kingdom Valley, but technically all of Radical Highway is a Chaos, is a Doom thing. But yeah, those I was almost sad when they weren't there, just because I liked having those midway through the level. But it's just so nice to have lengthy levels again, because again, even in Frontiers, all the cyberspace levels are, well, one, in cyberspace they're all fragments of old levels, and two, they're all short. You don't really sit like. There's some cyberspace levels in Frontiers, like I really like that one, but none of them are like, oh man, I will never forget this cyberspace level. Whereas here, like you will have a favorite Shadow Generations level, and there's ones you really want to go back to.
Yeah, I think in with the in level cinematics, I think that's like leads into like an even bigger discussion about how like Sonic Forces also had mid-level cinematics, but they sucked.
They were
They were so bad.
Yeah,
And I think the big thing with Shadow is like, obviously there's been bigger peaks, but I think in terms of consistently good cinematics and animation, Shadow is like probably the best in the series.
I think, yeah, go Vera. You're gonna say something?
No, I just agree. I think it's a very, very consistent experience.
Yeah, I think even Sonic Team just upped their game in terms of like understanding even cutscene cinematics. Because in Frontiers, besides the Titan fights, when characters would talk, it would be like they're standing in a spot, right? and they mainly talk in that. So whereas in Shadow, like you can see like when Shadow's angry, you see him shaking and his
Yep,
eyes
yep.
are moving. When he's like shocked because of something with Maria, his pupils are dilating and he looks scared. Obviously, when he's mad, he's charging up. Or like obviously the moment we all know, like when he smiles genuinely for the first time, it's like
Yeah, that was
it
good.
feels so good. Yeah, and even like when he saves her in the beginning, the way the camera is shot, like I feel like they just even learned how to just good cinematography and filming, like and
Yeah.
showing
Yes.
scenes
While
really
not
well.
cutting down the momentum of the actual speed, because I think
Mhm.
that's the other thing too, is like I I feel like when I got to a cinematic cutscene, I was half expecting like the speed aspect to kind of get lost to it. But I, like the
Yeah.
one thing I'm even remembering, because we were just talking about Sunset Heights, is like that bit in the level right before you're chasing Black Doom and you're hopping between the different parts
Oh
of the
yeah,
building, is
the
like the
robots.
world is
Yeah,
shifting and it's looking like Inception. And
yeah.
I remember thinking during that portion that it goes into that cutscene and he's like hopping on all the different things. You're getting the
Mhm.
zoom ins on his face, like, yeah, getting angry and like gritting as he's gliding across the wall,
Yeah,
and thinking, oh, but it still feels like as if I am running and going through the level.
exactly.
You know, like,
Really
whereas
good
I feel
loading
like
screen.
in a lot of other modern 3D Sonic games, you somewhat had that, and I think they were probably trying to create that with parts where you literally can just put the controller down, and like
Yeah,
if you just touch a button, like if you touch a button, you literally lose.
Yeah,
So
there's
you
the
just kind of want to
infamous
keep the controller
forces
still.
double boost. You don't have to press
Right.
anything.
Right, right,
Yep.
right. And I feel like that's probably what they were going for, but they kind of
yeah,
nailed it with the balance of the cinematic moment and clarifying like, oh no, you're in a cinematic bit right now. You don't have to
yeah,
actually touch the controller. And having that separation without having to like, run into something. I also felt like it was very generous with checkpoints. Considering the
oh
fact that
yeah,
the levels were longer, I had just prior to playing Shadow Generations, I had 100%ed Astrobot. And I feel like Astrobot, there's a checkpoint literally after every little thing that you do.
yeah,
And I was thinking, oh, going into another platformer that's not Astrobot, as somebody who's not really huge into platformers, I was somewhat concerned, but I never was like stuck so far behind in which it wasn't taking me a
yeah,
long time to get to the next area, which also I think comes along with the idea that like Sonic and Shadow are always moving fast and have to
yeah.
always go fast and stuff too. One other thing I wanted to touch on when you brought it up earlier with the cyberspace stuff, and you guys were talking about level design, is I do think it's interesting they went with Chaos Island and not the cyberspace levels, because I think they understand, like the team making this understands that the different world areas in Frontiers were the
Oh yeah,
interesting levels in that game,
yeah.
right? And like when stuff comes back from Frontiers in the future, I don't think it's going to be any of the cyberspace levels. I
Oh
think
yeah,
it's going
it'll
to
be
be the
one of the
different open
islands.
worlds.
I think
Right,
also
right.
they did Chaos because they did Sunset Heights, and the Death Egg robot from Sunset Heights was on Chaos Island, so they put it at the
Continue it.
very
Yeah,
front
right.
of Act
Well,
One, so then it like
Right.
links it.
Right,
and
right.
also cyberspace doesn't, unless they do the highway level in cyberspace,
Yeah, pretty much.
it doesn't make sense because cyberspace is like Green Hill, Sky Sanctuary, and Chemical Plant as like the
Yeah.
level themes. So it wouldn't even make sense to have. I would be disappointed. I'd be like, well, I'm just playing levels in Sonic Generations at that point.
Yeah,
So
even
for
like
them,
filters beyond it's even a simpler filter than that because the cyberspace levels are remnants of Sonic's memories specifically. So it
yeah,
wouldn't really make sense for Shadow to go through them.
Hmm.
yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. That is true. That's why they did those. And it's
Mm.
like it was cool even how Gerald frames it. Like, yeah, you can see places that are from the future, and that's also probably because we're sharing a time space with Sonic, because he's technically there, just in another spot,
Sure,
and
sure.
so he could probably see they could see that. But speaking of that, I adored that scene with Sonic and Shadow. I thought that was just
Oh, so
such a
good.
cool
See
thing for
ya.
the fans. Yeah,
Yeah,
see,
that
like
was so
I
cool.
love that's to me that moment of Sonic where I'm like, dude, I just love how this series can go from like a serious tone with something, like what's going on with Shadow and him, to something like Sonic and him's dynamic that is just so
Yeah.
cool. And I think someone talked about this on Twitter, right? It's kind of cool to see that like him and Sonic, like Sonic is kind of like a dick in that cutscene, right? It's not like he's like,
Yep.
well, do you need help? Like, what can I do for us to, work this out together? He's just like, sorry, I'm taking this emerald. Like, I'm going peace,
Yeah, right.
Like he doesn't really care. And I like that. I like that. Like at the end of the day, Sonic's like always gonna do what he believes is the right thing, but he's not necessarily just gonna pander. And so having their dynamic, their back and forth a little bit in the beginning, him doing the reference, they did the reference to SA2, like, I found you, but he says Shadow instead of Faker. And Shadow
then-
says the date to die for line from
Yep,
Heroes. So good, so good. I was waiting though, like my one disappointment, I was waiting for the camera to pan and us to play that level. I was waiting
Oh,
for
I
it, man.
also thought that was going
Yeah.
to be like a mini boss.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think they definitely should have done. So I think Mike and I talked about this, but I think they definitely should have done rival battles because I wanted that Sonic fight. I wanted Emerald so bad, and I wanted Infinite.
I wanted
Yeah.
Infinite, dude.
Mhm.
Wait,
In
wait, wait,
terms
wait.
of-
So with the Emerald thing, I know Infinite is something that I heard a lot of people want. But with Emerald, I actually was going to ask about that because obviously Emerald was in those little anime things that they released in the
Yeah.
lead up to Shadow Generations. Is Emerald and potentially Infinite? Maybe they're going to be in the DLC with the Keanu Reeves stuff.
I don't know. I would love it, but
I don't
like
think so.
I don't know. So the thing about the reason I think they won't do Infinite because technically Sonic Forces hasn't happened. So if
Yeah.
Shadow sees Infinite, Shadow remembers everything from Generations. He would know of Infinite.
Sure.
So it would make. I mean, but they can figure out a way to make it work. But that's why I feel like they
Memory
probably
wipe or
won't.
something. Sure.
I'm not even memory wipe. That could be one of the reasons he just shits on him when he meets him for the first
okay.
time.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah.
destroys him. That could be one of the reasons.
Well,
he's already
I
fought
don't.
him.
Would he know him? Because like when he met him, he wasn't even like Infinite at that point.
Oh, yeah, true. He wasn't in the mask or anything. So that's true.
I mean, I think the Keanu DLC, like the movies, is just gonna be like Tokyo. Like here's Act 1, Act 2, bye. Like I don't think it's gonna be
Yeah,
a boss and a bunch of
maybe
stuff.
you
I
like
genuinely
unlock
think
the
Really?
skin for the rest of the game.
Part of
Yeah.
me feels like we are going to get like another world portion. I think there's going to be 2 levels, and you're going to get Act 1, Act 2 Tokyo, and then I think it's going to be Act 1, Act 2 something from Shadow the Hedgehog. Because to
I
me,
would love
that
that.
was the big thing missing
Yeah.
from this was that there wasn't any representation of a stage direct from Shadow the
Shadow, yeah.
Hedgehog. and I feel like in a game called Shadow Generations, going through all of his story beats, that would probably be something they would want to do. I know obviously they're moving away from that game, you know, even like with the guns and adding in the stuff with the Chaos Spear. But because the Chaos Spear stands in for the guns, you could still have a lot of the same gameplay in whatever level they want to bring back. And obviously they would fine tune it to be like a Sonic type Shadow Generations type level. But I actually think that they are going to do that, which is why I was interested when you said Infinite and the stuff with Emerald. That to me almost seems like one of the 2 of them would be the boss of that DLC. I almost feel like it's going to be because you can't have it be, well, maybe you can, I don't know, but you can't have it be after the final cutscene, right? Because the whole thing after the final cutscene when he's crying and he walks away from Maria and they're going to link up with Sonic at the end of Sonic Generations, right? With like with the Emerald and everything. So you can't have it take place after that because it would take place after Generations. But I'm assuming the DLC will just like open up another area on the map, implying that it could just happen at any point during that.
I mean, I was thinking, like, I don't know, I've been having this debate. The reason why I don't think this DLC is like the same as like Frontiers where they had a whole pass is because at the end of the day, this is still like a remaster and
Sure.
Shadow Gens is the new content in it. And so having like a game within a game get in-game content besides the movie thing, which I think is just a bonus promo,
Sure.
I just doubt this time. I mean, I would love to be wrong. I would love if they went all in. Hey, here's a photo mode, here's new levels, whatever, and all that. And so I just think with that stuff, like they're not gonna do an expansion. I'd love to be wrong, but I just feel like because this was, to me, this feels like again Bowser's Fury. The new content is what they added, and so there isn't gonna be extra content on top of that.
Yeah, very well could be.
Yeah.
I'm very curious because with Frontiers, we had the first Sonic game that really got like a major update, like post launch, and now this game compared to the original Generations is getting new stages added to it. So I'm hopeful they'll do something, but yeah, I don't know if I'll see Infinite or Emerald because I really wish I really wish they would, but yeah, I don't think they will, but I would love it.
Why would they bring Emerald back beyond than just like a little bit of fan service to fill out part
The
of
fan
his
service.
backstory? That's it? Just
Yes.
literally because
That's what I want.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
I mean,
That's
like,
fair.
if you go back to Sonic Battle, the story of Emerald is that Gerald found him and helped set him up, and then he went berserk on the arc. So Gerald had to turn him off and put part of Maria's soul into him, as he did with Shadow. It's not exactly her soul, but it's just the way it's worded in battle. So he does that, and that's why when he wakes up again, he's like not just a killer robot. He's actually friendly and trying to learn stuff. So like they did that because Emerald technically was on the arc 50 years ago. So they just did that as a cool thing that, hey, this did happen. Maybe Shadow and Emerald fought. So I was hoping, because they're doing this, that they put him in the game as a rival battle, because, you know, Generations had a system that would have worked to put Emerald there. Because, like,
100%. Yeah.
who else is going to be Shadow's rivals? It was like Sonic, obviously, not really Silver. Mephiles, they wanted to do that, but they made him a boss fight. Infinite again, if they wanted to do that, or they could make him a boss fight.
Sure.
Even hell, like Metal Overlord, Shadow never fought Metal Overlord. He fought Metal Madness, which was the form
That
before.
was fire, though. That boss was so much fun.
Yeah.
And even hearing like the Heroes music kicking in during that, oh my god, I love it.
wish they did a remix. I wanted that so bad. I mean, I love What I'm Made Of is my favorite Crush 40 song, and I wanted a remix of that song so bad. But they just did the original, which is it's still good. Especially after getting especially getting the Devil Doom and hearing the remix of All Hail Shadow, I wanted it so bad.
Yeah, it's like it's titled, funnily enough, in the soundtrack as a remix. So I think it's like a very subtle remix where I think they changed the instrumentation of it slightly, but
Probably like re-recorded it or something.
yeah.
When are we putting this up tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was gonna say that just as a fun little anecdote, when you said All Hail Shadow, that karaoke video that I was filming for Sega for something undetermined that you guys will see soon. Right after I finished recording that portion, we were just having fun and like looking at other things that were on the list in the karaoke bar, and All Hail Shadow was in there. So we turned it on.
Awesome.
It was so much fun. And I was shocked because like there wasn't really a lot of, I looked for other Sonic music, and Live and Learn was in there, but they didn't really have anything else. But they did have All Hail Shadow at this random karaoke bar in LA.
That's funny.
Shout out to Venue. Shout out to Venue.
I like All Hell Shadow, but where was the love for I Am All of Me?
Oh, right.
True.
I was also
There was
expecting that at some
nothing,
point.
bro.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm all of me.
they loved
That is
All
such a
Hail
good song.
Shadow, and they loved Radical Highway. Like Black Doom was obsessed
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Radical
Yep.
Highway.
I was definitely a little disappointed that we didn't get a Kellen Quinn song for the
Yeah, I
finale.
thought, I
that
thought
would've
they were
been
gonna do that
crazy.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
And,
I
like
thought it
especially
would've-
because they did the symphony and he sung "Live and Learn" with
Sure,
Johnny from
sure.
Crush 40. So I thought they were gonna do that even.
See, Live and Learn wouldn't make sense without Sonic. I feel like that is Sonic and Shadow's theme
They're learning.
together.
Yeah, they're living
you know,
to
like,
learn.
yeah, it's like I feel like that's their theme together. Wouldn't make sense for
Yeah.
just Shadow. But I feel like even if it was All Hail Shadow with Kellen, or if it was just a mix of him and Crush 40 something. But I still think it was raw regardless. I mean, hearing All Hail Shadow spawn in when you're in the final boss fight with an orchestrated version of it was
so good.
really sick. I really love that final boss. And in general, I was talking about it. Like I felt Frontier's bosses still are peak in terms of like how high energy they are. Like I think it's incredibly hard to match like the vocal themes with like the cinematic moments of Supersonic. Whereas I felt like with Shadow, the bosses were better like in terms of like moment to moment gameplay. Like they're more grounded.
Yeah, they
and
feel way
have
more
mid-
like Sonic bosses.
Yeah, exactly,
Sure,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Where it's like Supersonic is like, let's just flex, enjoy, just bash this enemy. Here's some QTEs. It looks cool. Lock in. Whereas again, here it felt like, even the last level was an incredible. It felt like a set piece, right? That's how sick that final fight with Devil Doom was. It was like a set piece. As you're on the water, you're using the squid, then you're using the wings, you're using the spears, you're using like all the abilities you've learned up to this point. In a final fight, and it was so cool. Like I like how the wings at the end, you can just fly anywhere with them. It just felt raw, and then you go through him when all the gut spew. It's crazy.
So the start of Devil Doom, I was a little worried when I saw I was on Surf because it brought back memories of
yeah.
Forces. where the final infinite fight is literally just a Metal Sonic fight again. So I saw that and I was like a little worried that it kept going. I was like, okay, no, this is good.
Yeah, when that fight started, I thought maybe Devil Doom was going to be like a mix of everyone's fight. So I thought maybe we would start like Metal Overlord, then maybe go to Mephiles' fight, then maybe end with like a Bio-Lizard type sequence where you're Chaos Spearing stuff.
That Bio-Lizard fight was also awesome too. You bringing that up, like
Yeah, the bosses in general in this game are very good.
playing that again in HD though, I think was just kind of mind blowing. That's kind of how I felt about this whole game because I have a very similar situation to Mike, where like my first real introduction to Sonic was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. That was like my height of, like everything that I loved about it. And I had started, I think my first Sonic game was Tails Music Maker or something on like the Sega Pico. And I was not a Sega kid growing up, right? So I didn't play the original Sonic Adventure or 2 on the Dreamcast. I had only played 2 as my like first real foray into the series on GameCube, and that is sort of what like spearheaded everything else. And so I don't know, it was just seeing a lot of the stuff that I was familiar with as opposed to some of the stuff in Generations like that I was unfamiliar with. I know they're pulling from more games in Generations than just like the few modern ones, but it was just mind-blowing to see some of this stuff in HD. And again, the stuff that they weren't willing to shy away from the bad games. Like they were
I love
happy
that.
to bring stuff back from Forces in 06 and kind of have this revised history a little bit and make those levels actually good and entertaining. It was just such a fun time.
It was funny to be getting to the end of Kingdom Valley, because at the end it has the water walls. And I remember that's the thing that made me quit 06, because I got to that point in 06 and I couldn't figure out what to do. I was like, okay, I give up. All those years ago. So it was funny seeing that, being like, oh, this is so much better now than back then.
Sure.
It actually works.
Yeah, I like that.
It works the way that it was intended, right?
I definitely am not a fan of when franchises and like IP holders will like be like, hey, we hate this thing too.
Yeah.
It's like, there's got to be someone out there that likes Forces. So like, why not bring it back? Or maybe at least someone out there that thought it had potential.
Look,
so yeah,
even
bring
Nintendo,
it back.
I was going to say, even Nintendo put the original Super Mario movie in the Nintendo Museum. So exactly, there's got to be someone, even if they hate it, they still acknowledge that it exists and know that somebody out there enjoys it.
Yeah,
So,
I always hate it when a series is like, yeah, this was stupid, right? We're in on the joke too.
Yeah. I think that only works if you do something and you pair it with something that, again, makes that thing better in the long run. Like it makes you look back on that thing fondly, even if it was bad.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, if there was like a wink and a nod before Kingdom Valley and they were like, oh, maybe it'll work this time or something. I don't know. Yeah. Like that would be fine because then, then it actually
like,
is good.
You come out and big like, is it better than last time?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
I think just in general, the way it handled like callbacks and everything, like it is Generations. Shadow Generation is like, it's still a Generations game, so it's still full of references. But I think what I appreciated about it is it felt, even though it was taking stuff from old games, it still felt fresh.
Yeah.
It still felt like a fresh experience and a fresh narrative.
Yeah, it's like it's really this is a very unique game where it feels like it's a sequel to Generations as well as an expansion as well as a new game. Like it's a very rare thing that a game gets to do all that at once, because people have always said that they wanted a Generations 2 or like just more DLC levels to that game. And so I feel like this fulfilled what people wanted while also framing it in a new game instead of just like, here's new levels for Sonic gens.
Sure.
And so like even shockingly, I was talking about this, like the Act 2s being 2D levels, like I love them. They felt almost like Sonic Rush games where they had the boost, they were fun, and they made me like I was talking about this, like one of the best things this game did for me was like it made me realize like, wow, it's not that because a big debate fans have had for a long time is like, dude, like we don't want 2D segments or 2D levels in a 3D game, like we just want it to be 3D. And for me, I was on that train too, where I was like, okay, like these, whenever I get to a 2D level, I'm like, oh man, here's like the break. Whereas this game, the 2D levels were genuinely so fun and well designed that I was like, I will gladly have more 2D levels if they're on this quality. where they're almost 2.5D. You're playing with foreground and background. You have unique mechanics in them, dynamic camera stuff. Like it felt so good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they
felt
made
like
the best of it.
yeah, I was gonna say like Sunset Heights Act 2 is one of my favorite stages in the entire game, and it's 2D, and that
Yes.
has not happened to me
Yes.
before.
That stage is really, really good. I love the kind of interactivity with the Death Egg robots in the back.
Oh, most
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have even different mechanics in a Sonic
Yeah.
level that you have options to use. Like
Sure.
you don't have to use Chaos Spear except maybe on one enemy, but like you can chain them to hit a bunch of them, right? Like obviously, Surf and Morph, like do Morph are like required, but the other ones like Chaos Control is completely optional, like except the 4 segments of it, it's completely optional for you to use. Doom Sphere completely optional to use, and even honestly like the Doom Morph, you can get through a lot of the level without using it if you smartass it. But I like that the levels like had almost options. And really, I think this is the first time it really felt like Chaos Control was really cleverly used. I love the
Sure.
fact that when you're in Chaos Control, everything stops. And so you can technically walk on top of a train in Rail Canyon. You can technically, one of the smartest uses of it is in Sunset Heights, where the robots are tossing rocks. And when you use Chaos Control, they stop. But it's not that they just stop, it's that you can now homing attack them. And so you can
Yeah.
get to a higher path with them. And so even Space Colony Arc, right? It doesn't just stop the bullets. You can stand on the bullets to get to different platforms. So I thought that was because they really could have gotten away with just, oh, it freezes things. Here's a free chance to get through the stuff. But it's cool that it almost unlocks more paths for you.
Yeah, most definitely.
That's another
Speaking
thing
of
that
unlocking, oh, go ahead. Go
real
ahead.
fast, because the chaos control thing, the thing that I really like about it, it reminds me of like boosts from Sonic Rush, where that boost was more of a reward for you doing stuff, for defeating enemies, doing tricks. So I like that chaos control is a mechanic that takes that, where you're rewarded for beating enemies. So now when you're going through the level, you almost want to plan out what enemies to defeat to get your chaos control.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been so cool to see people optimize that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because even when you defeat enemies in Chaos Control, it then recharges your next Chaos Control. So it's like, it just feels like there's a lot of clever ways you can use Chaos Control to get more stuff.
What I was going to say on the topic of changing levels and unlocking new levels and stuff too, we haven't really touched on it that much. We did very briefly, but like the open world environment, I actually thought was so much fun. And I know across the board, this is something that people agree with, but like they really did just Bowser's Fury that shit. Like it really is. It felt like Bowser's Fury, but it didn't feel like a ripoff or anything like that. It felt like the right way that Sonic would do it. It almost even kind of felt a little bit like an evolution of Frontiers. Where I remember there were certain portions in Frontiers where I would unlock an area and then I'd, go up a rail or something. But the way that some of those were built out and just the mechanics of that game, so many times I found myself like falling off of rails or boosting all the way to the other side of the map and then having to like come back to it and slow myself down to get back to that portion. Whereas I think the way that they actually spaced out the little floating platforms and like the area where it's like that vertical tower that you're climbing up. I forgot before what fight that is. I don't know if that's before
it's
the
Rhea Island. Where you're
right.
Yeah.
That was so much fun. I felt like this game did a really, really good job of having this sort of like open world-esque hub, but without it being too big, like with it being manageable, having it where you could warp to the areas that you've been to before. If they were to do another adventure type game, right, and have these big, cool open world environments that you could explore that then have little entrances to get into the actual levels, I would be so happy with that. Because imagine if these levels were built out and themed, right? Like you're on a snowy mountain, or you're in like a tropical area or something. You got whales jumping all over the place, and you're getting to each of the levels and each of the different acts via, those little warp things like you do in Generations. It would be absolutely peak.
I think what was cool about the open zone is in Frontiers, it felt like a lot of them were there, like, because in this game, all the challenges felt like, oh, you genuinely have to like try. And they're well thought out and well designed. Like some of the timer challenges, or you have to get the timer, were really challenging, right? Or you have to get a certain amount of rings, you got to plan it out, or use a certain spear, or use your ability. And it was really cool. Whereas two things in Frontiers. In Frontiers, a lot of them are just there to be there. So, for example, like the one where you have to, everyone knows, light the ground puzzle, right?
Sure,
Where it's
sure.
just like a mobile game thing. It's like that just feels like it's there to be there. Or there's one where it's like a jump rope one, and it's like they were these challenges where it just felt like this isn't really Sonic like. This is me. This is stopping me from progressing and making me slow, right? Whereas everything in all the challenges in Shadow Gens were ones that made you, go move around, move fast,
Yeah,
use your
yeah.
abilities. Whereas like in Frontiers, you could theoretically do everything on an island with the base moveset you have. You can do everything with the base
Yeah,
moveset. There's
yeah.
nothing that's exclusive to having a different move or anything. And so I really like that. I even like that you unlocked more things to do in the open zone as you did it. Because in Frontiers, the open zones don't evolve or change. It's like when you get to it, go, by all means, go do everything on it before you do the story if you'd like, Whereas it felt like, at least in here, there was like, okay, I need to unlock this to do this. I need to unlock this thing to do this thing.
I also like the scope of it, because with Frontiers, they had the issue of popping all this, because they tried to make giant islands that didn't really run well on their engine. But with this one, it still feels large, but the scope is smaller, so there's no popping, everything's just there. And so like, that whole issue people have with Frontiers just isn't in this game.
Yeah, what's funny is what's interesting is like even on I tried the Switch version, there isn't pop-in there either. So it seems like they figured out whatever the pop-in issue was. Because originally they had said the pop-in issue for base Frontiers was because of the Switch one. And so I don't know what they did, but they figured it out. I mean, there's no pop-in at all in Shadow Gens on Switch. It's basically the same game, but it just runs worse. And so I'm glad they figured that out.
Again, it's just a difference in scope, because at no point does it have to render out a whole giant open world.
Yeah,
But
Sure.
even then, like, I'm not even sure if it's an issue, because in Frontiers it was, I think, just very aggressive implementation that I think, like, from a developer perspective, that's not something that's difficult to kind of disable. I mean, modders can disable it by just changing a value, but they kept it very aggressive even in the versions of the game that didn't need it. Because like, you play on PC or you play on PS5 or Xbox One, and it's like, I mean, I'm fine with it existing on the Switch version for the compensation of the Switch version, but if you're playing on the stronger systems, it didn't need to exist to the degree that it did.
Since
Again,
we're talking,
it all just comes down to the overall polish that we've constantly highlighted for this game. It's just always there. There aren't really very many issues when it comes to how the game looks or runs or just generally presents itself. Everything feels like a modern Sonic game should.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like if the biggest flaw with the game is that you just wish there was more, it's a good problem to have. I mean, it's like,
Well,
at the end of the day, this is a side thing that like is almost treated as the length of a main game. Because to be honest, like, it is the length of base gens. I mean, it took me about 4 or 5 hours of doing some challenges, doing the base game and everything. Like, that's about the length of gens.
It's nearly
I was glad, though.
100%. Besides, I'm missing like 10 chests and 10 of the bolts. It took me like 13 hours, which is longer than like most recent Sonic. Well, not Frontiers, but the other Sonic games.
Yeah.
Were you, Roger?
Yeah, I was just gonna say you were talking about like the only complaint that you had is you wish that there were certain things that were longer. But actually, Mike, you were just about to say something, and I remember right after the last episode of Japan Time, you hopped in that call with us, and you were like, "Yeah, I don't know necessarily if my thoughts on the game are aligned exactly with how I felt live streaming it." And I said, "Was that positive or negative?" And you were like, "Well, you're gonna wait and find out." It was like a little bit of a tease for the spoiler cast. So I am curious, like, do you have any other major complaints, or is there something that you thought about over time or played a little bit more of and you were like, actually, I'm not a fan of this anymore?
I mean, to answer the question that I posed when we talked before,
Right.
I would say when I finished Shadow Gens for the first time, I was a little mixed. But over time, as I kept playing it, as I replayed levels and 100% of the game, I'm now a lot more positive on the game. I'm much more positive than I am negative. I do still have some complaints. Like, I do wish that maybe there were a few more mechanics that felt more like toys, especially in the open world. You know, I would like something where it's like it's a spring, but you can launch in multiple directions instead of just one direction. Or maybe this game has functional ramps, and they like use them in like 2 areas. And every other ramp either has like a spring or a boost pad that sends you off. This game has functional.
Or it's a ramp that you use Doom Morph for, which would
Yeah.
actually be my main complaint. Is I hate that mode. I don't ever want them to come back.
Yeah.
Doom Morph is
I
ass.
love Doom Morph. I actually like Doom Morph.
So do you but let me ask you what part you like about it. Do you like the traversal squid aspect, or do you like the swinging aspect? Because the swinging aspect, once I finally kind of understood what you're supposed to do with it and like the momentum of it, the swinging part I was fine with. It's the actual like movement on the ground feeling like a worse version of the Kraken from Splatoon that I didn't like.
I like both because it feels to me like an evolved version of the wall cling platforms from Frontiers. Because like I think that is like an interesting idea to like boost onto a wall and cling to it, but in Frontiers it was just so slow.
I kind of like, here's the thing, I got used to Doom Morph, but it's like I would never say I want to see Doom Morph again. You know, that's like my way of seeing it. It's like, it's like that's really my way of putting it. It's like I got used to it. I was fine with you
being at this party, but I'm never gonna hang out with you otherwise.
Exactly. 100%. Like that's the best way to describe it. It's like, we're cool. I figured you out. We had a good time, but I'm good on hanging out again. Because it's like,
good.
Unless I had chat like with me to explain it and how it works, I would have been, because even like chat was trying to explain it to me. I was like, I was not getting it. I was like, wait, what? So you have to like, it's either you let go where he's facing and that's where he's going to go, or you hold it, which is fine, you know, but I think the game doesn't explain that well. And I just think, it's like you said, where even just the feeling of how you move on the ground with it feels like, I don't like a movement that like limits you. Like when you press R2 to boost, like you're locked in the direction. You can't really move the way you want to. Like, I wish the movement was more, you know, everywhere. I can move anywhere, no issue in that mode. Sort of like when you're an Inkling. Whereas here, it just felt like you were heavy and you could only move in one spot with it. But again, when you get it, it feels good. Like, I liked being able, like, because there's crazy skips you can do with it. Like when you boost and you jump, you can go really far with it. And I thought, again, it was fun when I learned it. But I also thought, I almost wish they had found a way to mix it with Doom Surf, because they're effectively the same thing. It's like you're using it to go on like a platform you usually can't, you know? And so besides the swing, it's just Doom Morph, but with swing, Doom Surf, but with a swinging mechanic.
And Doom Surf I enjoyed. I liked being on the back
like
of
Doom
the
Surf.
Manta Ray thing and doing all that kind of stuff.
It's very
it was
reminiscent
fun.
of like Sonic or Tails on like a snowboard or a skateboard.
Yeah, definitely.
But even then, that has that flaw of like turning around with it is like a nightmare. You kind of have to like jump and turn. So I think if they just left you do, what would you call it? Like omni movement, like just 360 movement, no issue on those things, they would have been much more fun.
I will say that I liked Doom Morph on stages because you could plan around and it worked as it intended. I did not like it on the 2 boss fights you had to use it, especially like on hard for Mephiles, because I think they just get rid of some of the orbs. But then it becomes an issue where you have to get up the platform, and when you launch yourself, the first one for some reason doesn't let you do the thing where you go under and launch up. So that it's just like, okay, now it's RNG if I get this or not to get this S rank, and they keep retrying. And then on Neo Devil Doom, to get S rank, you have to perfect the Doom Morph section, and if you mess up at any point, you cannot S it. It's like, it's very strict.
Yeah, how's the Doom Morph? I think the Doom Wings are really cool, though. I really like that. That's basically the game's
It's like Supersonic. Yeah, I think that's the way Supersonic should work going forward. Like,
and I think
so cool.
100%. Like, because Supersonic's always been weird when you unlock it, because it's like, especially in the boost games, because it's just like, well, it's not like you can do anything different. You're just boosting and you can't get hit. Whereas here, it finally felt like, oh, I can fly through a level. It's a different run. And so you can just do some crazy skips. There's different areas you can go to. I wish they almost had put rings in the sky when you replayed them with the wings in certain areas, like, oh shit, hey,
Sure,
you can go
sure.
here. But like even on replays, just to get better speedruns, it's been fun to see like how far ahead you can skip with the Doom wings. And I think to me, that's a fun reward. And I like that they added the ability for every level to be S ranked in a different form with the Doom wings, because that's good replay value. I think it's also like it makes sense too, because I feel like the way you approach a level with the wings is completely different than a way you do it without the wings.
Sure, sure.
I feel like the wings are another reason they didn't do the homing dash, because the wings are essentially that, realistically.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
just boosting through the air. So it's just a way of letting you do that, but now it's like a mechanic in the game rather than this thing you can just do.
And it's a separate leaderboard, thank God.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly, which is great. Like I love that. And I said this, like I really love the leaderboard stuff. That's always been a thing. And like it's weird. It's not always like I wish they had it in Frontiers almost. It was disappointing when they didn't. But I like having leaderboards because again, I was talking about this. I saw in Japan Time in my video. Like I adore Mario Wonder and Astrobot, right? But when I finished those games, there's like nothing to do.
Right, we
Whereas
were
at
done.
least I felt here like, okay, I beat the game. Now I can go beat every level again with the Doom rings to get a different S rank. I can go online mode and do, time attacks, beat my time on the levels. Like I would have loved a time attack in a game like Mario Wonder, like see how crazy fast I can get through
That
some of
would've been
those
great.
levels. Or again, you're seeing Astrobot do this thing where like only the levels that they're adding as DLC now have like a time attack to them
Yeah.
instead of all the levels just having that.
Sure.
'Cause it's just a fun reason to replay the game. And my other issue, if I was to say it, was I still think these games need better rewards. Like I love the concept art, like I think that's cool to find, but just give me costumes, man. Like I really think they gotta lean into more costumes because people like unlocking that in platformers. It's fun to run
Yeah.
around in a costume, and especially when it comes to Sonic, like mods are huge. People
Oh, yeah.
love modding Sonic games with different skins and different stuff. So I feel like even
I
the
almost
fact
feel
that
like
they
that's why
added
they
that,
didn't, right? I feel like they
Yeah,
know
I
the
think so
the
too.
audience is going to do it, so they're like, why put the extra work into it?
Yeah, I
in
think so
doing all
too.
these official costumes if they know people are going to mod it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, but also, I mean, the mods are already starting, which is really cool. Like, I'm on Game Banana. There's already like Festive Shadow Maria, where they're all in like Christmas costumes. Someone put Tropical Resort from Sonic Colors in there. And what's cool is because this game shares an engine with Frontiers, a lot of the mods from Frontiers are really easily puttable in Shadow Gens and vice versa, which I think is really cool. Because to me, people don't like reviewers and stuff don't care about this, but to me, it always has been like mods are a part of Sonic's DNA to me. I really think like that's a big part of why those games last such
yeah,
a
for
long
sure.
time is because people make crazy mods with extra levels and things. Right now, someone's doing a mod for Sonic in Shadow Gens where he has his own unique looking wings. He uses the rider's gear instead of like the surf. Like people are already going crazy with it and getting clever. So
That's cool.
yeah, can't wait to see what people start adding in.
I think speaking of mods, if there is another thing I'm not a big fan of in this game, I think the cinematic animation again is definitely the best we've ever had it.
Yeah.
But like Shadow's moveset animation, I'm not too super thrilled with. I don't
What do
like
you
the
mean by that?
spinball. I don't like the boost animation.
Mm.
Oh, I agree. Like how he floats instead of skates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
He
agree.
has-
I
there's,
wish
like-
he was just skating.
There's, like,
he's been
no-
doing that since Generations.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no like sway in his body when he turns.
Yeah, because when there were sometimes I didn't want to boost just because I liked seeing him skate around the
Yeah.
open zone.
I
And
talked
so
with
you're right.
Which, you know, the 5 people are going to know this reference. I was going to be
Yeah.
like, do you think he needs the exaggerated swagger of a black teen? Is that what
Yes.
Shadow needs?
I was talking with McBarrett, and I wish like when he boosted, he kind of had that like snake-like skate he
Sure,
does in the
sure,
movie
sure.
trailer.
Yeah,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
that would look so cool.
Why? There's a mod already, skate boost animation.
Oh, yeah,
There
I
you
got
go.
it
So
immediately.
Someone's getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Essentials mod, which like it gets rid of some of the rim lighting on him and also gives him the skate animation.
Yeah,
it's
no, stuff
awesome.
like that. stuff like that helps. Like and yeah, I know people. If anything, the spin ball move he has for the movie skin that's coming up looks more like
Yeah,
a
I like
spin
that a lot
dash where you
better.
see him spinning. But yeah, no, I understand that. I think they need the models they're using are really good, but I think they definitely need a bit more sauce. Like the Sonic one still feels like
Yeah,
I don't know. Like it feels still like it's plasticky a little bit.
yeah.
But they're trying. They're still trying to do cool shit with it.
Yeah, I don't know what they do with the Shadow because like they must have given like him some more bones or something because like
Yeah, Shadow is so good.
he just looks so much better than Sonic or Rouge in this game.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Shadow's animation. Maybe that's what they're gonna do for Sonic next game. But yeah, his animations
Hopefully,
are
yeah.
really good.
I think
And
both.
speaking,
Oh,
there we
you
go, Mike.
go.
I go Mike there. I was gonna say like speaking of characters, like the hub world characters were really cool. I
Yeah, that's
wish.
where I was gonna go to.
Oh yeah, it's like I wish, as funny as Big is, I would have liked I would have rather someone else than Orbot, Cubot, and Big because I feel like Rouge makes sense, Omega makes sense, Gerald Maria, fantastic surprise, but I would have liked Emerald, like you said in the open world there, or who'd be another character, or even Abe, like Abraham, the gun military director
yeah,
who
the
was
commander.
they put him in, yeah, the commander, having him there, like, because we really didn't understand that they had a relationship or some kind of relationship till the dark beginnings, when he mentions like, hey, if he needed my help, I would have given it to him. We grew up on the arc together. So having conversations with him would have
show
hit
him
so
in
hard.
part 1 as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like having him there would have hit harder. I feel like Big could have been the funny character, and that's it. I did not need Orbot and Qbot as a slot.
Yeah, well, I'm number one big hater. So when he showed up, I was like,
that.
why are you here?
Oh, God. Yeah, why are you?
But I understood
Omnipresent.
because they didn't put him in Generations. It's like, well, I'll just put him over here.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I do like his dialogue. Like, he's very funny. He asked Shadow, hey, can you teach me chaos control?
Yeah, that was funny.
He deadass just lore jobs that he's visited the Soliana, so he's hung out with
Soliana, the Ark, yeah. And like, because like when he mentions the Ark, I'm like, wait, when has he ever been on the Ark? And it's like, oh wait, they're referencing Sonic Adventure 2 when he's just on the background of all the stages.
Yeah.
Cosmic Fall, I think, was definitely one.
Yeah. No, Big the Cat I can get with just because again he's the funny one. But yeah, Orbot and Cubot, not only were they just like the worst quest in the game, which is get the bolts and you get a clock for it. But it's like they have no dialogue. Like it would have been cool if they gave some insight on Eggman, like what it's like working with Eggman, how he's been, his thought process, like stuff like that would have been cool. But they just don't do anything besides like get the bolts.
Sure.
That's kind of
a
bit of
Orbot
a general issue that I have with some of the cutscenes and some of the interactions. Sometimes it felt like they were a bit too quick, or that they ended a little bit too immediately, or there just kind of wasn't enough of them. I think outside of the stuff with Maria, I think everything with Maria was everything that they needed to do, they did, and it was handled beautifully. But I think with some of the other characters, they probably could have done just a little bit more.
Yeah. I mentioned with McDareth, I thought it'd be nice if the boss battles had a larger presence in the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Well, because I felt like Mephiles was the only one that I felt like had a lot more effort in its presentation. Like the fact that, again, he's isolated from the world, he's underground, you got to use the goop to get to them. The other ones are just like, here's boss gate. Whereas like with Mephiles, it felt like there was a bit more purpose to the visit, and like more design intent with it, which was really cool. But I mean, obviously, having BioLizard there makes sense. Someone pointed out it would have been cool if BioLizard was like an overworld boss. That would have been really sick.
That would have been pretty cool.
That would have been super fun. I would have liked that.
It would have been very cool. But yeah, no, I think for the most part, really good job. Again, it's one of those things of like, it's a side game, but it's so good that we treat it like it's a main game, but it is technically side, because you can tell when the game is slowing down, because it does start with 2 zones, then boss, 2 zones, then boss, and then it becomes Chaos Island as a thing. Then it becomes one boss, one zone boss, one
Right.
zone boss, right? Um, but yeah, no, I'd say I think even narratively, again, it was really cool to see, and they've been doing this over the last year with the Dark Beginning animations and this. Like, I feel like a lot of us were very easy to, and it's always been a dark story. Story. Don't get me wrong about like Gerald and Maria and what happened, right? But I feel like it's always been easier to make fun of and not care too much about because we always just see the one flashback, right? Whereas here, like now that we've finally seen throughout the last few months, like Shadow and Maria's life on the arc a bit, or you see how he is with her here, and seeing how much he cares about her, and hearing them talk with each other, and seeing how his tone is with her. Like, I feel like that relationship is so much stronger now, and I feel like it finally really hurts to see what happened with Gerald and Maria, especially if you read the Gerald journals and you see like the guy slowly losing his mind and how he tried to do everything, but he just couldn't because he put his hands in too many places. It gets really sad.
I have to say that I am very thankful for the lore team and Ian Flings. These are the best Sonic characters been written in such a long time.
Yeah.
And as someone who loves the story and likes to sit down and think through the story of how the stuff fits together, like I already felt validated with Frontiers, but this game is just pushing it forward. Like here's all these characters that are, like you said, they have a dark story, but it's never been told. I feel like it hasn't been told seriously enough for you actually to care what happens to them.
So it's now in wikis and lore.
Yeah, so now in the game itself, it's getting you be able to express how these characters feel. Like even Gerald, who obviously by the time Sonic Adventure 2 happens, he's basically the main villain because he's the reason the arc is going to crash to Earth. Him sitting there and say, "I believe in you, son," to Shadow is like that actually hits.
It's crazy.
You feel that. Yeah.
And it's cool too that someone pointed this out where Shadow, because technically Maria and Gerald are going back to their time, and so when Shadow tells Maria like, "I will carry on your wish to make sure everybody can have a good heart and to smile," that is the wish she ends up telling Shadow before she dies, and so it's not a retcon or anything weird. It's like if anything, it's retroactively like making it so that nothing changes. He says that wish to her, and she gets to say that to Shadow in SA2 before she dies, like she always does, which I just thought was really clever. And even like Gerald's final journal entry, because in the game you get these Gerald journals. The last page is his speech from SA2, where he says like, "They took everything from me. This is my final request, the final weapon that will get rid of everything and ruin this world that wronged me, yada yada." Like that's the exact speech he gives at the end of SA2. So
I
really
remember,
good shit.
I'm still torn up about it till this day, thinking when I was like a 10-year-old watching that final cutscene, "Do you have anything else to say, sir?" And he's sitting there, "No," and then you hear the gunshots go off.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
It is
a really
wild.
dark story.
It is. It is.
They did a really good job of explaining. And again, it's like I think this game, and I feel like Sonic Frontiers really proved that at the end of the day, like, yeah, this is what Sonic can be when it is at its peak. It's like, yes, it's a platformer, but it's a platformer with like story, with lore, with characters that like you can feel for. Like it's not just in the 2010s, it felt like they were erasing that. It's like, let's make everything fun and just very typical mascot platformer.
Villain of the month is jumping around.
Yeah,
Nothing
exactly.
seems linked.
Yeah. Whereas like here, it felt like we're finally at that point now where it's like, okay, let's have both. We can have these characters have fun while also taking the lore and the world seriously, because that's what really makes this franchise look different than everyone else.
Sure.
I since we're on this part, I want to talk about this with Mephiles. The fact, we touched on the show a bit, but the fact that, so he pops up, and the first thing, for people who haven't played Sonic 06, the way that game ends is they erase Iblis from history. So no one remembers him. No one remembers anything from Sonic 06 except Big, because, Big is that character who would remember. So no one remembers anything, and then Mephiles just doesn't exist. So the fact this fight kicks off, Mephiles is talking to Shadow like, "Oh, it's finally my chance." Shadow's like, "What are you talking about?" Like because he doesn't know who he is, and it ends with Mephiles just saying that all he wants to do is exist, and like that hits so hard when you realize that like this is his one chance to exist in the timeline again. And that's like all he's fighting for. And he's voiced so incredibly well that you hear all that emotion as he says that.
Yeah.
Fun fact, he's voiced by Robbie Draymond in this
Yep.
game. Voice of Akechi in Persona.
And also,
Yes,
isn't he the friend in Final Fantasy 15, with the pictures? Who's the friend with the pictures in 15? Oh my
I haven't
gosh.
played 15.
Oh, Prompto.
Prompto. Thank you, Prompto.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that one, and then at the start of what's called, I mean, it is Neo Metal Sonic, but Metal Overlord, when he kicks off and he's like, "I'll defeat you, prove I'm the true Sonic and the ultimate life form," because he calls Shadow fake, because like his whole thing is like, Metal Sonic wants to prove that he's better than Sonic.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I liked, someone pointed this out, which is really clever, is that every boss is a different version of Shadow. Like you have Bio Lizard, which is like the failed experiment of Shadow. You have Metal Overlord, which is like, another Metal Sonic Shadow type character. You have Mephiles, which is like a version of Shadow, and then you have Black Doom, which is like his father, essentially. So a very, very nice little detail that they did with that, and maybe why they didn't want to go with other types of bosses for the theming. But really cool shit, man. I think this is, we've been yapping about it for a while, but it's just like I said, this is the type of game of Sonic where I'm like, just keep doing what you're doing. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
Like make level. If you keep making levels like this, stories like this, set pieces like this, you're good, man. Like I don't have any. This is really the first time I finished a Sonic game where I'm like, I trust you guys now. Good luck. Go at it.
Yeah, that's like where I am in, because Frontiers I thought was in the right direction but had some issues. But I was like, okay, if they could do another one that feels good or better than this, then I feel like we're in good hands, and I feel like this game for me is that.
Yeah.
I think this game for me isn't that, but not in the sense that, they took Frontiers and they evolved upon it like completely, but they've just simply made a good game for this.
Yeah.
A good feeling game, good feeling Sonic game, but it doesn't feel like this is an evolution of what Frontiers put down in its entirety.
Sure.
But
No, I don't think so either.
I'm still very happy with what we got though, and I think in the context of what this is, it's exactly what it needs to be. I think if we do get a new full, well, I mean we will, but like a new full Sonic game going forward, I think I would like them to push more of the stuff that was the foundation of Frontiers, but this game as its own thing I think is wonderful.
Yeah, because I think I still like Frontiers a bit more, and I still think it's because of stuff like the supersonic, the set pieces there are crazier. I think also the combat. I mean, that's a big thing, is this game doesn't have combat. Like you have homing attacks and moves to hit, but you don't have combat like in Frontiers. And not that Frontiers combat was crazy, but it made it feel like an action game. And so I want, like, if this Shadow game had like Frontiers combat, that would have gone crazy, where like you're using Doom Spears into like some crazy spin moves, using the Chaos Control mid-fight to do some crazy combos. I feel like that would have put it a step above, right? But I think Frontiers still having like a combat set, a bigger world, more mechanics, more areas to go through, I still think has that like slight edge, because again, it's still also a full game. Whereas this is just like polishing those aspects. And so if the next game is a marriage of these two, where like, okay, you have the polish of Shadow Gens, the crazy cinematic super moments of Frontiers, actual levels with cinematics midway through like Shadow Gens, I think you have like something insane here.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly think that's a good place to end it, unless any of you guys have
Well, I have
any other last thing.
So I have a question. So with that, what would you guys like to see next? Because for me, I really think they're more than capable of doing now Sonic Adventure 3.
I agree, but I actually think it would be smarter, and I know this is probably weird to say. I think don't even worry about remaking the original Sonic Adventure. Do Sonic Adventure 2. I really think like you are writing the Sonic and Shadow hype. I think you remake Sonic Adventure 2. You maybe make some of those 100% missions a little bit easier from that game. I think you fine tune some of the levels. You have those cinematics and you tell the same story, but you also add in the stuff that we now know about Shadow's past and the things that we've learned about the lore of the story into the original version of Sonic Adventure 2. You bring back the Chow Garden, you bring back the battle, and then finally that is when you do Sonic Adventure 3. Because I do think it is now at a point where the majority of kids growing up playing Sonic have never played Sonic Adventure 1 or Sonic Adventure 2. Those kids probably grew up playing Colors or Unleashed, and not necessarily or even maybe like the horrible Wii games. What was the Black Knight and Secret Rings or
Rings.
whatever?
Secret
Yeah.
Rings.
Like I could see that being what a lot of these kids have grown up with now. And I'm saying kids, I mean like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. If we're talking kids, like the Sonic games that they've grown up with were things like Generations, right? So it's been much longer than I think people realize since Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2 were
Over 20
originally
years.
released. And obviously, they're available on Steam, but kids nowadays are going to want to play whatever the newer game is, even if the newer game is bad, because they don't care about reviews or whatever. They're just like, ooh, new Sonic game, I want to buy this. So I think it would absolutely behoove them to go back and at least remake one of them. And if they're going to remake one of them, I would say do two, because I do think a full remake of 1 and 2, yeah, and putting them in the same package would be way, way, way too ambitious, unless you were doing something like a remaster, right? More of like when I say remaster, I mean remake in the sense of something like a Xenoblade Chronicles, right? Where that game functionally is very similar, has some quality of life stuff, but ultimately it's a very, very, very similar experience to the original title.
Mhm.
And then a little bit of added content with Future Connected. Whereas I think they wouldn't even need to add content if they were going to do like
I
a
think
Xenoblade
they
Chronicles Definitive
would.
Edition type of
I
Adventure
think they
1 and
would for
Adventure 2.
Adventure 2. They should add a hub world, because Adventure 2 is like you're
Yeah,
literally
of
just
course.
going mission.
You're on the
mission.
map, sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
so they
Yeah.
should put a hub world
I-
in Adventure 2, and then I think that'd be
But
pretty
see, if
good.
they do that at that point, that would be you just remake that game then. You don't necessarily even remake Adventure 1.
My opinion is like they go ahead with a Frontiers 2, right? Because that is still a different kind of game. It's an open world game and it's got a combat moveset and all that stuff. And I think going forward, they should make Frontiers 2, have multiple playable characters like they tested in the DLC. And once they're done Frontiers 2 and maybe like one more hurrah or style of that, I think then the next thing you go to is adventure. Now we do know there's rumors, big rumors, that the next thing they're doing is a Heroes remake, which I think there's some clever stuff they can do there where okay, next year could be a Heroes remake with a side team that's doing that. And then by that point, 2026 will be 4 years since Frontiers, which probably is enough time to warrant the next game coming out. So I think 2026 we get Frontiers 2. And then, you have the year of DLC and stuff. Then 2027, they can announce Adventure Remake. That comes out late 2027, 2028. And then we get Adventure 2 leading to 3. Like, I think it's
So
going to
here's
be a
my
long
only
road.
here's my
but
only
that's my
concern
plan.
or question about that, as somebody who's not as
Um,
familiar with like the development cycles and the teams of Sonic versus
Right.
like something like a Nintendo. When it comes to Frontiers, right?
Mhm.
Was the Frontiers development team the same as the development team that did Shadow Generations? Because I honestly
No.
feel like, okay, because I feel like going back to Frontiers, despite how different obviously that gameplay feels, after
Mhm.
this, when you're now riding the high of people that have
Yeah.
not played a Sonic game in a long time, I think would actually be a grave mistake. And
No,
I
I
don't even
agree.
like mean to oversell that. I really think that would
No,
be
I agree.
completely the wrong decision to do that next, because
Yeah.
if you do that next, you then lose all of the goodwill you have earned over the course
Yeah.
of the past like 2 years.
It's
And that's not to say Frontiers like wasn't good. We all enjoyed Frontiers or
Yeah.
aspects
That's
of
not
it,
true.
right? Okay, we enjoyed aspects
Yeah,
of
most
that game, right?
people like Frontiers.
Most people enjoyed Frontiers more than the average Sonic game,
Yeah.
I would say. And
Yes.
I think that was a step in the right direction, and I think this felt like the fulfillment of we have now stepped in that direction. And I think if they go back to Frontiers and they don't nail it completely, I
Mhm.
think they've genuinely screwed themselves over for the next 5-6 years after that.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
then
the
people are
way,
going to go, oh no, okay, Generations was just a fluke then, right? They were building
yeah,
off the base of other games. This was a fluke, and that was that, and
I
people will
mean,
forget about it.
quite
I think
literally
the
what
good
happened
thing.
after they released Generations.
Right,
Yeah.
right, literally, and I think they want to avoid that
Yeah.
because people
I,
really enjoyed Generations, and then it took till Mania for people to really fall back in love with it, and then
yeah.
right after Mania, again, they lost all that goodwill with Forces. So
Yeah.
it's
Because
it's tough.
we know from like the only thing we really know development side of this is that they started working on this 2 years ago, which would be right when Frontiers wrapped up and came out. And so they had like they had a small team working on DLC, though the year-long DLC for Frontiers, and then they had, B team on whatever it was on Shadow Gens, but they're all still in the same headquarters and like place. So doesn't work like Nintendo where like they're the same name, but they're a different dev studio internally. It's
Mm.
still the same employees, but they have different chunks of them. So I do think it's gonna have the polish of Shadow Generations and that movement, because you can see it's still the same engine. It's the same engine. A lot of it is the same asset. So they're sharing and working together. So if we're looking deep on like the development side, I do think it is going to take a lot of this polish and care and how it moves and plays, and but add it to the Frontier style.
And that I think is fine, but again, they have to nail it. And so I
Yeah,
think if
I
they
agree.
are potentially remaking Heroes or something, I think that would almost be a slightly better choice, like a remaster or a remake of Heroes, because at
Yeah.
least if that game is not as good, people will go, well, yeah, the original game wasn't as good, whatever. And then
Yeah.
and that will be the argument against that. Whereas if you're continuing on from what is now your modern property, and it's not as good as the thing that you just did that was an expansion for their
Yeah,
last what
exactly.
many people believe to be good 3D game. I
Yeah.
think that would, yeah,
No, I agree.
that would be the only mistake with that. So they would have to know they are going to nail it.
Yeah, thankfully, like it's interesting because like we're in a incredible place, but again, because it's Sonic Team, yeah, like it takes one Jenga piece to fall off for the whole tower
Right.
to fall
Right.
off again and start from scratch, like, but
And
they
it's tough
are,
because right now, I mean, universally, I don't even think just like looking at the games. I think like with the movies,
Mhm.
with all their side stuff they've been doing, like with the IHOP stuff, they are riding a high currently. And
Yeah,
I think you want to continue riding that high, then go
yeah,
backwards. And like I said, I think a Frontier sequel right after this does almost feel like going backwards, whereas it feels like going backwards, despite the fact that we would literally be going backwards with Heroes, because a Heroes remake or a Heroes re-release would simply just be like reminding people of an older game. It's like
yeah,
it's not the next major game within the
yeah.
series.
Well, interesting too. I actually made a video about this today, but it's interesting when you look at the sales. Is this game sold nowhere near as well as Frontiers in Japan?
Mm.
So in Japan, Frontiers debuted at like 40, 50K. This game debuted at like 8K units physically.
Really?
Yeah. So Japan, I think, likes the more combat driven open world style. Whereas on paper, this game is still a way bigger success. It did 1 million in a day, whereas
Yeah, right.
Frontiers did worldwide 2.5 million in a month and a week. So it's just interesting to see like the differences. Like this game didn't really move the needle in Japan, but Japan loved Frontiers, even
See,
though this game was being
You
marketed
also
more.
I
said
find that
physically as
so
well,
interesting. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
because I was just saying you also said physically, but what if a lot of the people in Japan bought the game digitally?
See, I took that into account and I looked at like the top 10 on PSN and the top 10 on
Mm.
Switch. On the Switch, it's like not even in the top 30. And
Oh
then
wow.
in the PSN, it's like behind Phasmophobia and like number
What
11. So
the
it's
heck?
like, it's really not pushing in Japan too hard, which is interesting. Like, it's just interesting. Like, Sonic is just not hitting in Japan as much as they wanted to. Now, granted, that's been the case for a long time. So Sonic has been a big question mark in Japan. Like even when I went, right, it wasn't like when you go to stores, Sonic stuff is always there. It's like there were some stands for Sonic Shadow Gens, and I thought they were starting to push it more. But it's just a weird. It's food for thought just to know where we're at, where the series is bigger than ever, but in Japan it's not moving the needle. And I wonder if because Frontiers did so well there, that they like the more Frontier style because it's more action driven and bigger. And
And
they
it's
had like the one
fascinating
OK
though,
Rock
knowing
stuff.
like how they are with 2D Mario games versus 3D Mario games, where 2D Mario games like blow up in Japan, whereas
Yeah.
3D Mario games historically do not do as well. So it's just odd to me that then Frontiers would be performing better there
Yeah, I know. I
than
know.
a remake of a game that has
no,
more
because
2D levels.
no, but see, Japan hates 2D Sonic. Like Sonic Superstars in Japan, hella flopped. Like that game on launch did like 4K physical units. That was
Well,
like the
I
only
Whoa,
launch.
mean,
really?
Yeah.
I mean, Sonic Superstars is understandable.
But
No, of
but
course,
also
but even then, just
that
like
timing was like not to
obviously
make
with
an
Mario
excuse for
Wonder,
Superstars.
of
Putting
course,
that the same day as Mario
of
Wonder was just the
course,
biggest mistake on the planet.
of
Yeah.
course, yeah. But yeah,
I
Well,
will
right
say,
on.
because I want to quantify one thing. So I
Yeah.
do think they should do Sonic Frontier style. When I say Adventure 3, big thing for me, Adventure is multiple characters, hub world. Like that's the
right.
major thing
In
for
the vein.
with Adventure. Yeah, that's why I think it's
Sure,
like
sure.
I definitely don't name it Adventure 3. I think that's silly. But I honestly I don't even know calling it Frontiers 2 because Frontiers itself has at least has a stigma over here at least because a lot of people didn't like parts of Frontiers. But just take Frontiers, evolve it, and like you said, multiple characters. Actually, put instead of doing cyberspace, build out the world more and have it be themed. So stuff is like you go to, why am I forgetting? It's not Metropolis. Is it just Central City? I know Central City is one, but that's not correct.
Like Station Square.
Station Square, yes. You go to Station Square. There's a stage there that fits it. I think Metropolis is a name because I know that's a stage in Forces, and that's from Adventure 1, I'm pretty sure. So like stuff like that, like have it actually build out, and you go to places. You have open zone areas, but you're actually I actually really want to open zone in a city because I feel like that just fits Sonic, and we just like that'd be so much fun to actually run around in a city and then like not even Radical Highway or Speed Highway, but one of those is just like that stage is in the city and you actually run around to it through the city to get there.
I don't know what I want. I don't know. I kind of want more linear stuff, to be honest. Even the open zone in this game, I don't know. It was fun as like a side activity, but I don't really.
You
I
wouldn't want
haven't
it to be the main game.
I haven't fallen in love with open zone as like the main hook so far. I mean, maybe they could make it work, but again, I think
Yeah.
Boost Sonic doesn't really fit well in an open zone, just because Boost Sonic is all about like that flow state through linear kind of automated mechanics. You stomp, boost, hit a spring, ride the rail, kind of stuff. I'm
yeah,
not
this
sure.
No,
go
what
ahead.
were you gonna say? No, I was gonna say like this is where the Sonic team has a challenge because for me like I'm the opposite. Like I love open zone because it's nice to have like I don't know, you're a character that's so fast and so fun to control. It's fun to have like a world you can just be free in, and do whatever
Yeah.
you want and not just guided
Like-
by a level.
It was funny. I replayed, or I tried to replay Frontiers this year just to like see how I feel about it all this time. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, I pinged you when Frontiers first came out after like an hour of playing. You'd be
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm having so much fun.
Yeah.
Same thing happened when I replayed it. I played it for an hour and I was having a good time.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened. After an hour, it's like I'm like broken out of the spell.
Right.
It's just like I just get this feeling that like I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. Like, is the open zone I think is incredible in concept and makes sense, and it's fleshed out in Shadow Gens with unique challenges. But in Frontiers, again, it suffers from like, do the floor puzzle, do the jump rope.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a time trial, but it's like dumb easy where you straight up just run in a line and you make it to that spot. Whereas like in Shadow Gens, you had to be more thorough. There's some of the time trial challenges there are brutal because once you get to the time thing, it moves to another spot and you have to find the best path to get to it, you know? And it felt like it was actual challenge to that instead of just, we'll just go there and you get something for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did like how in Shadow Gens they do kind of with the time trials, they incorporate larger obstacle courses into it. Like
Yeah.
in hard mode, all of the
they're
major
brutal.
structures have a time trial.
Yeah, they're brutal. They're actually really hard.
So yeah,
I like that too.
I don't know. I think again, if we're gonna go open zone, I'm gonna need more multi-purpose mechanics. Like again, I'm gonna want ramps that I could fly off of in many different directions and not just like go up a ramp with a boost pad, hit a spring, and then go up one direction.
Yeah.
I'm gonna want, more stuff like that.
Yeah.
More, I think, like, also, I would like to see momentum work with boost as well. I don't really see a
Yeah, I
reason why
think
it
so,
can't.
too.
Like boost, I feel like boost is good. Actually really like boost. I prefer it to spin dash. But I don't see any reason why it has to be the top speed.
Yeah.
Like a boost could be a high speed, but then like going down slopes make its boost faster, going up slope makes it slower, something like that.
Yeah, agreed.
I think also in terms of kit, I think slide could maybe change. I don't think I used slide a single time.
Yeah, they
except
don't really make
There's
use
like
of it.
one use that I remember.
except in the hub world, because I thought there was a fence you could slide under, but you just can't.
Oh, yeah, no, you have to use the morph to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind
Yeah,
of
I
yeah,
forgot
remember,
about
no.
that. I completely forgot about that little area because I didn't stream the game. I got it a couple weeks early because I was doing that video and I recorded it. And yet myself as I was playing through it, I thought I was supposed to slide and I didn't have a chat to tell me what to do. And then it took a while for me to figure out, oh yeah, you just got to go morph mode to go under it.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that
Hey, they
until
don't
you
really make
brought it
you
up.
slide at all. It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so I
it,
think
man.
it'd be cool to see slide maybe replaced with a curl or something, just something else
Yeah.
that's maybe like a downward ability.
Yeah,
I don't know
it'd be
why they
nice
don't
to
just
see
put in
Sonic
spin
have his own.
dash, like as such a core thing that the modern
Well,
games just don't use.
I don't see the purpose of spin dash with boost.
Yeah, it is a little difficult. I mean, it was fun in Frontiers when you had the spin dash and you were able to like fly over structures, but I think they do need to balance
With
it in the
Boost,
next game.
not that if I'm remembering this like correctly or incorrectly, Boost, are you fully invulnerable when you boost through anything? Because I know
Not
you can boost through
anything, but you
enemies.
can boost through enemies.
Because I almost feel like that would maybe be an interesting way to do spin dash, is that you would then have the invulnerability no matter what you end up hitting.
That
So
is
like
Kind of how
say
it
for
works in
example,
Frontiers.
That is
Oh,
how it works.
okay,
But
yeah.
the spin dash is what goes through enemies when you have it.
Right,
but
right.
Boost doesn't. If you boost it to one of those like robot guys, they like hit you.
Because I feel like there's certain sections. It didn't really happen that much in Generations, but this has happened a lot in a lot of modern Sonic games, where they have those areas that you like literally just can't beat the first time you play them in terms of like
Yeah.
not getting hit, because they'll just be random things that pop up every once in a while.
Yeah.
In the middle of the road. I almost feel
Yeah.
like that would be the way to negate that if they still wanted to have that for those like super hardcore people that want to do it and memorize the
Yeah, that'd be
patterns. It's
sick.
like you could have spin dash basically work as an invulnerability to just go through all those spikes or knock them out of the way or something, and it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily affect you at the
Yeah.
cost of being slightly slower than boost.
I think it'd be cool if like curling did make you go through enemies, but like maybe it stopped boost. So like you would have to curl
Yeah.
at specific
Right.
times, like to
Right,
go through
right, right.
enemies or maybe to go down slopes.
You can just bring back the
one-
slow somersault from Sonic Adventure 2 where they go underneath. That'd be kind of cool. I'd be fine
Yeah,
with that.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
thing I like about the Frontiers boost is the fact that it doesn't beat enemies.
Yeah.
So if you did that in conjunction with like rolling, it would just add kind of a layer of nuance to
Yeah.
just interacting with the world using
Yeah.
the roll on slopes, but like flat surfaces you want to boost, stuff like that.
And maybe rolling could give you like a tighter turn as well, so it's kind of like a pseudo drift.
That'd be cool. I'd actually really like that. Well, right on. I think that covers it. We've been at this for 2 hours now. This did not feel like 2 hours. This
Yeah.
felt like
I feel like we could easily go on for like
30
another
minutes.
hour or two.
Oh, easily. Yeah. I really do feel like this was completely a step in the right direction for Sonic. And
Yep.
again, I don't want to see them go back after this. And I actually honestly don't think they have. I kind of feel like they've learned their lesson and they've seen the responses to this. And I feel like even if they were planning to go in a different direction with other stuff, I almost feel like the overwhelming positive response to this should be enough to sort of convince
Yeah.
them that maybe if they are doing something else, let's take things in a different direction, even if it is going to take a little bit longer.
They also have a much bigger budget now. They have a bigger team. Like they hired a lot of people now. And I do think like Sega is on their ass a bit more now to be like, you need to just make sure these are great. Cause now like with movies, you now have a much bigger casual audience that's about to get into these games. And so you got to have things that are like ready and not to be released until like it's really ready.
So I'll be real with you. I think Sega was the issue. I think a lot of these games
they were
got rushed out because like, well, we just need the game out, put it out.
But
now Sega's literally giving them time to make games and investing in them more. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, that honestly is very similar to the Game Freak issue, I feel like, right? Where like for so long they had to get out a game every single year, and now like with Legends ZA and seemingly with whatever Gen 10 is going to be, I do feel like they are actually taking their time now to make sure that the next one's going to end up being good. So yeah.
Yep.
Well, that is going to wrap things up for today. Thank you all for joining us. Obviously, if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We'll be back in 1 week because you're watching this, I'm assuming the day it goes up, which is Monday. We'll be back in 1 week with a new episode of the show. And it's going to be an interesting one because it's going to be the first one after the investor relation meeting for Nintendo. So we might actually have something Switch successor to talk about, which is kind of cool. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye, everybody.